They never saw us coming. The Galactic Council, the so-called apex of civilization, sat in their shimmering sky palaces, trading stars like poker chips. There were over 400 species in that room, each with their pride, their ancient bloodlines, their endless debates. They talked peace, culture, unity. But beneath the velvet robes and synthetic smiles, it was all about power. Who controlled what? Who ruled who? Earth was never invited. Not because we were unknown. They knew we were out here, watched us like animals behind glass, took notes as we killed each other in trenches, in deserts, in concrete jungles. They hovered their cloaked ships above Hiroshima, Sarajevo, Aleppo, judged us, laughed at us, feared us, because what scared them wasn't our violence. It was how we survived it. They waited for us to die out. Thought we'd wipe ourselves off the map long before we reached the stars. But the thing about humans is, we don't stay in our place. We don't wait for permission. We don't ask to be saved. We fight. I remember the first time I stood on a council world. I was 19, a grunt, face still covered in the red dirt of Theris 6, blood drying under my nails. They called us earthborn brutes, said we had no grace, no control, no understanding of balance. Balance? I'd watched my brother bleed out beside me because some floating worm lord wanted our water reserves. There's no balance in politics, only winners and losers, so we made a choice. If they wouldn't give us a seat, we'd build our own table. Out of metal, blood, and fury. By the time I turned 30, Earth had colonized 19 systems, each one ripped from the grip of dying empires. We didn't ask. We took. While the Council debated ethics, we terraformed wastelands. While they signed peace treaties, we built battleships the size of moons. We didn't hide our power. We flaunted it. But here's the twist. We didn't do it for glory. We did it because we had no other option. The universe had written Earth off before we even left orbit. Called us barely sentient. Said our minds were too fractured for diplomacy. Said we worshipped death too much to be trusted. So we gave them death. Targeted strikes. Surgical retaliation. Cyber siege tactics that crippled entire planetary economies. We didn't fire the first shot, but we made damn sure we fired the last. That's when the invitations started coming in. Suddenly, Earth was a promising rising member. Suddenly, they wanted to discuss shared sovereignty. They built a chair for us at the council chamber. We never sat in it. You see, we didn't need their approval anymore. Our fleets patrolled the lanes. Our tech outpaced theirs in less than a decade. Our soldiers, orphans, street kids, shattered men like me, became legends across systems. Not because we were stronger, but because we had nothing left to lose. That kind of hunger terrifies gods. They called it terrorism. We called it survival. I still remember when they sent an envoy to my unit. Some gold-skinned creature with 6 arms and a voice like silk. Offered Earth shared governance if we dismantled our unregulated planetary defense grid. I lit his transport on fire. We weren't playing their game. We were the new game. I'm not a hero. I've done things that keep me awake at night, things no man should ever be proud of, but I did them because no one else would. Because Earth, our messy, brutal, beautiful Earth, deserved to stand without begging. And now, when I walk past that council chamber and see that empty seat with the Earth sigil glowing above it, I smile. Because that's the truth no one in the galaxy wants to admit. Earth never asked for permission. And we sure as hell never needed it. I wasn't born to fight. No one really is. You're born crying, soft, helpless. You learn how to fight when life doesn't leave you any other choice. That's how it was for me. Born in a gray sector block on old Earth, real Earth, before the skyways, before the planetary exodus, before Earth became a symbol, back when it was still dirty, hungry, broken. My old man worked hydro lines in a city that barely kept the power on. My mother? I barely remember her. Just the sound of her humming when she did laundry in a bucket because the machines cost too much. She died when I was 6. Lung rot from the mold in the walls. No health care, no chance. By the time I turned 11, I'd learned 2 things. 1. Nobody was coming to save us. 2. If you wanted to survive, you had to be meaner than the world. I learned to steal first, then fight, then lead. There were no schools by the time I hit 13, just ration centers and boot camps. Earth's global infrastructure had already collapsed twice. The governments left were puppets, swinging under the weight of the new mega-alliances, corporations that treated nations like brands. Earth wasn't a planet. It was a product, sold, traded, outsourced. Like everything else. But Earth had one last resource no one knew how to measure. Us. The kids like me. The ones with dead mothers and useless fathers. The ones who grew up on powdered milk and cracked knuckles. We weren't educated. We weren't trained. But we were angry, starving, unbreakable. That's what the reclaimers saw in us. They didn't wear medals, no uniforms, no brass speeches. Just patched leather jackets, old scars, and eyes like razors. They'd been soldiers in the last planetary war, Earth's final stand before we lost control of orbit to the orbital cartels. When they came back, they didn't beg for change. They made soldiers. I was 15 when I joined them. Didn't even have a name anymore, just a number. They beat the soft out of us in 3 months, starved it out, froze it out, killed it out. We were just bones and hate, learning how to fire coil rifles and patch arterial bleeds in darkness. You didn't graduate. You survived. And if you did, they gave you a real name. Mine was Granger. The first mission I ever ran was a salvage raid on a moon colony abandoned after a fungal outbreak. Standard op, we were told. In and out. Collect tech, grab the cores, extract before exposure hit critical. They didn't tell us about the pirates. Half my unit got torn apart before we ever hit the reactor room. I remember crawling through blood, lungs burning, trying to drag a kid I barely knew by the shoulder. His eyes were already glazed. I kept dragging anyway. That's the moment I understood. Nobody out there values a human life. Not the council, not the corporate fleets, not the politicians smiling from behind bulletproof glass. Humans were cheap, disposable, replaceable. That's why we started taking what we needed. Fuel, ships, tech. Not because we were thieves, but because the galaxy never gave us anything. Not trade deals, not respect, not even a damn second glance. So we made them look. By the time I was 22, the Reclaimers had become more than a resistance. We were an army. Half the solar system's outer colonies were under our protection. Sometimes by diplomacy, more often by force. I'd seen planets burn. I'd set some of them on fire myself. The first time we took a council-aligned world, they called it a war crime. Funny. Nobody said a word when the Garoon Empire strip-mined our moon bases and left 10,000 workers to suffocate. No investigations when the Clerians introduced sterilization agents into Earth's water supply. An accident, they said. Though every child born that year was stillborn. But when we dropped a human flag on one of their rich core planets, suddenly it was genocide. Suddenly Earth was a threat to galactic peace. They sent fleets. We sent fire. The thing that shocked them wasn't that we fought back. It was how we fought. We didn't fight like soldiers. We fought like people with nothing left to lose. We sabotaged their supply lines, hacked their logistics, turned their allies into corpses with a smile. We used everything they underestimated. They thought our emotions were a weakness, that our rage made us reckless. They didn't realize our emotions were our fuel. They call it the night of the silent stars now, the night we turned off an entire star cluster for 8 hours, blackout across 7 trade routes, seized 4 carriers, took a high-ranking diplomat hostage, left them a message on the comnet. Earth never forgot, and Earth will never forgive. After that, the Council held emergency summits, voted on whether humanity should be contained. Contained. like we were a virus. But it was too late. We were in their systems, in their tech, in their shadows. I remember one op. We'd infiltrated a high-lux diplomatic station orbiting Renthis 9, the kind of place where alien royalty played politics over plates of cloned whale meat. We weren't there to kill anyone. We just hacked the speaker grid, played the screams of every Earth child lost in their wars, over and over and over. They called it psychological warfare. We called it a history lesson. Every time they tried to drag our name through the mud, we reminded them, we were the mud. We came from it. Learned in it. Bled in it. There was nothing they could throw at us that life hadn't already done 10 times worse. But with every victory, I felt something changing in me. See, war isn't glory. It's not flags waving and speeches echoing. It's quiet, rotten. It's the stench of dead friends and the silence of empty comms. You start to lose track of who you are. Or maybe you start to realize who you've always been. I started losing men, good ones. Men who believed we were fighting for more than just revenge. One of them, Darren. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. We shared a foxhole on Caldos Prime, shared rations, stories, even dreams. He died because I hesitated. There was a weapons facility. We had 5 seconds to pull the trigger. But they had kids in there. Half alien, maybe. But still kids. I froze. Just for a second. That second cost us 32 lives, including Darren's. I pulled the trigger after. Too late to save anyone. Too late to do anything except erase another part of myself. After that, I stopped freezing. We got meaner. Quicker, efficient. People started calling us monsters. I didn't argue, because sometimes monsters are what's needed. By the time I reached 30, Earth wasn't just surviving anymore. We were winning. Not because we had better tech, but because we had something none of them could manufacture. Purpose. They fought for protocol, for status, for trade. We fought for a home, for the right to exist without kneeling. The Council finally offered Earth a seat. I was there the day they broadcast the announcement. We welcome Earth into the Galactic Accord as an equal member, the Valari speaker said, twitching its mandibles like it had just eaten a rotten fruit. We recognize the contributions of humanity to peace and stability. Contributions. Like we were guests at their table, like we hadn't fought tooth and nail to flip it over. We refused. Not because we didn't want peace, but because we knew what their peace meant. Silence, obedience, weakness. Earth wasn't going to kneel. Not then, not ever. So now the seat sits empty. And the galaxy knows better. They call us dangerous, unpredictable, reckless. They're right. Because humanity doesn't wait for permission. We never did. We were born in fire, raised in ash, and sharpened in betrayal. We are the broken children of a forgotten planet, and we made the stars remember our name. And if that seat at the council table stays empty forever, good. We built our own damn throne. They always thought we wanted to be them, the way the aliens strutted through their ivory halls, cloaked in culture, dripping with history. To them, humanity was the new beast on the block, loud, unrefined, uncivilized, a toddler with a grenade. They thought if they just gave us a little status, a little recognition, we'd calm down. Settle in, learn to be like them. But that was the thing. We didn't want to be like them. We wanted to survive them. And by the time I turned 35, Earth wasn't just surviving. We were bleeding the galaxy dry. The turning point came on the ice world of Talvin Row, strategic mining colony, essential for superconductive minerals, materials that powered half the Council's AI fleets. It was neutral territory, protected by some old treaty written before Earth ever left its orbit. We didn't care. We needed the minerals. They had them. That was the equation. Simple, brutal, honest. I was leading what was supposed to be a negotiation. We had the muscle to take it by force, but Command thought we'd try diplomacy, see if we could finally play their game. So I went in, cleaned up, left my rifle on the ship, wore a pressure suit instead of armor, let my guard down. And that's when I learned something that stuck with me to this day. The galaxy fears Earth's weapons, but they hate Earth's courage. They didn't try to negotiate. They tried to kill me, a neurotoxin in the water flask. Subtle, almost elegant. Would have shut down my heart in 30 seconds if I hadn't noticed the light shimmer around the rim. I flipped the table before it hit my lips, pulled the knife from my boot, and drove it through the throat of the diplomatic envoy who'd offered the drink. Slit him from jaw to ear. My backup team stormed in seconds later, but it was already done. I was covered in alien blood, panting through clenched teeth, staring at the wide, blinking eyes of creatures who thought they'd just wiped humanity off the board. We burned the colony to the ground before sunset. I didn't even radio for approval. You don't try to poison a human, and then ask for mercy. After that, Earth changed its stance completely. No more peace talks, no more empty seats or symbolic gestures. We weren't playing on their board anymore. We were tearing the board apart. And I was the face of it. They started calling me the Butcher of Talvin. Every side has a name for you when they can't understand how you survived. But none of them ever say the name that matters. Granger. That's what my people called me. The kids who followed me through fire. The broken, bitter bastards who bled for Earth. To them, I wasn't a butcher. I was the one who finally gave Earth a spine. They trusted me. Not because I was kind, but because I was honest. I didn't promise them medals. I promised them revenge. I promised them we'd make the stars pay for every drop of Earth blood they ever spilled like it was nothing. And they followed me into hell for it. The Council tried to regroup, tried to paint us as rogue aggressors, a splinter faction. But Earth was unified now, in a way we hadn't been for centuries. We didn't see borders anymore, didn't care what languages we spoke. We bled the same, we hurt the same. That was enough. So we started tearing apart their precious treaties, one by one. First, the Neris Pact. 5 allied species pledged to defend one another from outside aggression. We took out their communication network in under 7 minutes. Hit them with a virus that made their ships see each other as enemies. They tore themselves apart before we even fired a shot. Next came the Cordix Alliance. Trade-driven, soft as wet bread. We boarded their freighters, rerouted their shipments, collapsed their entire economy in a month. Didn't kill a single person, just broke their world with pure, calculated cruelty. And the best part? We made sure the Council watched it happen. They'd underestimated us for so long, they didn't even realize we were capable of strategy, of restraint, of precision. To them, humans were wild animals with guns. But we weren't wild anymore. We were focused, and nothing is more dangerous than a focused human. That's when they tried to turn the galaxy against us. Propaganda, lies, broadcasts of human war crimes, manufactured evidence. Every system from here to Veltrix got a flood of holo ads showing Earth soldiers torching villages, laughing while aliens screamed. Most of it fake, some of it not so fake. But the truth didn't matter anymore, because the galaxy was scared. Scared of Earth's rise, scared of our fire, scared that the apes had climbed the tree, grabbed the crown, and weren't planning on giving it back. I got summoned to Earth HQ not long after that. For the first time in nearly a decade, I touched ground on the home that had made me. Still smelled the same. Wet concrete, old rain, burned metal. Some things never change. They wanted to promote me, said I'd become a symbol, a hero, wanted to make me a general, maybe even a representative if we ever accepted the Council's offer again. I told them to shove the offer. I wasn't fighting this war to wear medals or sit at tables. I was fighting because I remembered. I remembered the sound of my mother coughing herself to death in a one-room apartment. I remembered the taste of spoiled ration bars. I remembered the reclaimer who taught me how to fire my first weapon and then died protecting a useless outpost the council let burn. And most of all, I remembered that empty seat, the one they tried to give us when they thought we could be tamed. So I stayed on the front lines, where the war was real, where soldiers cried and screamed and laughed and bled. Where we buried our friends in vacuum-sealed bags and carved memorials into asteroid rock because we didn't have time for graves. I led dozens of campaigns after that, some successful, some barely survived. But every battle made one thing clear. Earth didn't need the galaxy's approval. The galaxy needed Earth's fear, and it had it now. But victory came with a cost. I started seeing ghosts, not literal ones, just faces, eyes, names I couldn't forget. Darren, Lucia, Cam, the ones who didn't make it, the ones who died because I told them to go left instead of right, because I called a shot too soon, or not soon enough. Their voices followed me everywhere, in the silence before missions, in the quiet after the screaming stopped. I started sleeping less, drinking more. There's only so much blood a man can carry before it drowns him from the inside. But I never stopped, because the moment I stopped, the whole illusion would collapse. The illusion that we were still human, that we hadn't become the monsters they claimed we were. So I kept pushing forward, kept leading, kept killing. Because if we were monsters, then maybe monsters were what Earth needed. Maybe monsters are what kept the stars from eating us alive. And if that's all I ever become, then so be it. Because I'd rather be feared for what I am than loved for something I'll never be. And Earth? Earth deserves more than love. It deserves justice, and we're not done yet. I used to think war had a finish line. That one day we'd win hard enough, kill enough, take enough, and it'd be over. That someone would raise a flag on some final battlefield, and the galaxy would kneel, and Earth would be safe. But war doesn't end. It mutates. After Talvin Row, after the Council's treaties crumbled and half their alliances lay in rubble, things changed. Not just politically, not just tactically, spiritually. There was a shift in how the galaxy saw us. Not as rebels anymore. Not even as invaders, as predators. And predators don't get peace. They get exterminated. The Council didn't send diplomats anymore. They sent extermination fleets, entire battalions of synthetic enforcers and drone armies. No broadcasts, no warnings, just heat signatures and orbital bombardments. They hit our outer colonies first. The newer ones. Places still growing food, still learning to breathe atmosphere. Thousands dead in seconds. They thought we'd crumble, thought we'd retreat, fold. They didn't understand Earth yet. They didn't understand me. I remember watching one of the first attacks on the colony at Arcadia 7. I wasn't there in person, just saw it through the recon feed, satellite footage showing the bright flashes of kinetic bombardment. And then, a voice. A child's voice. She'd hijacked the emergency comms and was crying. Just crying. Asking if anyone could hear her. Asking if her father was still alive. I still hear her voice in my head. That's when I gave the order. Project Afterlight. It wasn't something we ever planned to use. Not seriously. It had started as a theory. One of those deep black programs buried under 6 firewalls and 10 fake names. A last resort. The kind of weapon you don't even admit exists because if the galaxy finds out, you're already past the point of redemption. But we were past it now. I gave the authorization code myself. Afterlight Prime Echo Granger. It was a signal, not a bomb, not a virus, a warning. We discovered something years ago. Beneath the crust of Earth, inside a dormant plate under the Atlantic. An ancient signal. Not human, not alien, not in the way the Council defined it. It was older, Bigger. We never decoded it completely, just enough to know it was a seed of something. Some form of quantum resonance tech. Maybe an artifact. Theories ranged from a celestial black box left behind by an extinct god species to a failsafe buried during the first collapse. Whatever it was, it responded to human presence. And when we triggered it, the galaxy noticed. Within 48 hours, 6 council systems reported solar disruptions. Stars dimmed. Pulsars pulsed out of rhythm. Navigation grids failed. Something woke up, and it knew our name. The council panicked. They broadcast demands, accusations. They begged for communication, offered another seat, offered anything. But we stayed silent, because Earth wasn't interested in being invited anymore. We weren't warning them for negotiation. We were warning them for judgment. And that's when they sent her. The first voice in years that didn't come through static or threats. Just a simple message, unencrypted, directed to me. Commander Granger, I'm not your enemy. I'm what's left of your past. You trained me, remember? Caldera 9. 5 days without food and you still made us run drills. I didn't forget. So please, let's talk. Before it's too late. Her name was Mira, and I remembered her. She was 17 when she joined my unit. The only one who didn't flinch when I fired over her head during a training panic test. Sharp, focused, dangerous in all the ways a soldier should be. I thought she died during the Korea siege. But she didn't die. She switched sides. That's what she said when I finally agreed to meet her. Deep inside the hollow moon of Ferrix 5, a dead place we both knew had no traps, no allies, no war left in it. I didn't switch sides, she said. I just stopped following ghosts. I stared at her, trying to see the girl I once knew. But all I saw was someone who'd replaced her war scars with diplomacy and regret. She wore council robes now, spoke with their empty calm, but her eyes still held fire. She hadn't forgotten Earth, just given up on it. You came to beg, I asked. I came to warn you, she said. They're not just afraid of Earth anymore. They're ready to wipe it out. No more attacks, no more fleets. They're going to sterilize the system. Planet crackers, star eaters, technologies you haven't even dreamed of. They'll erase humanity, not just from space, from memory. I let her speak. I didn't respond, because she didn't understand either. Earth had already died once. We buried the old Earth in the ashes of poverty and betrayal. The moment we left the atmosphere, we stopped being the species that waited for permission. We became the species that rewrote reality. I didn't tell her that. I just asked one question. You remember Darren? She blinked. Yeah, he was the one who died because I hesitated. Silence. I leaned forward. I don't hesitate anymore, Mira, and I don't run. Tell your council, tell your masters. If they bring extinction, then they better make sure they hit the core, because if even one of us survives, just one, I stood up. We'll burn everything they've ever built. That was the last time I saw her. A week later, the stars around Sol system turned black, not from war, from blockade. The Council deployed their celestial ring, a weapon so massive, so far beyond anything we had, that even our highest brass stared at it in silence. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a sentence. We had 48 hours before impact. That's when Earth did something the galaxy never expected. We stopped fighting, not because we surrendered, but because we shifted the battlefield. We opened every human archive, every secret transmission, every war crime the Council ever committed, every treaty broken, every sterilized zone, every child's cry we'd ever recorded. And we broadcast it, not just across human systems, across all systems, every frequency, every language, every ship, truth, raw, unfiltered, unforgivable, and the galaxy listened. Some laughed, some turned away, but some Some started to question, because as much as they hated us, the truth was unavoidable. We were the mirror they didn't want to look into. We were them, without the lies. And something shifted. On the 47th hour, 5 alien fleets defected from the Council. Independent systems began pulling ships from the blockade. Some opened fire on each other. The Celestial Ring lost 2 stabilizers from internal sabotage. The weapon failed. And Earth stood tall, bruised, bloody, teeth bared, but unbroken. We didn't celebrate. There were no cheers, no parades, only silence, and the knowledge that we weren't alone anymore. Not allies. Not friends. But enough cracks in the Council to keep them second-guessing. We never got that seat. Never accepted their offers. The Council still meets, still talks, but Earth? We became something else. Not a member, not a rogue, a legend. The ghost in the void, the fire in the dark. And me? I stayed on the edge, still fighting, still watching. Because peace is just a pause between wars. And I know the galaxy. It never forgives, but it never forgets either. They stopped calling it Earth. Not officially. The home world was still Earth on maps, still spinning in reports, still orbiting that tired old sun. But the word didn't mean what it used to. Not after we turned away the galaxy's biggest weapon and lived. Not after the Celestial Ring cracked and fell like a dying god. Now they call it Origin, the birthplace of madness, of rebellion, of fire. To the Council, that's what we became. A disease, not a people, not a culture, a contagion of defiance. You don't negotiate with a disease. You quarantine it, burn it, starve it out before it spreads. Too late. Because Earth wasn't just a planet anymore. It was an idea, and ideas don't die. You want to know how I knew we'd won? Not the war, not the politics, but the fear? It wasn't when they dropped the Celestial Ring and missed. It was when others started calling themselves human. Not species-wise, not in flesh, in principle. I remember docking on Karth 1, a backwater mining moon that should have been empty after the plague hit it 3 years back. Council declared it a dead zone. But when we landed to resupply and rest, we found an entire city underground. Self-built. Hidden. I walked through narrow tunnels of welded scrap and makeshift oxygen lines, my boots clanging against steel with every step. The people there, 3 arms, eyes like smoke, skin that changed color with emotion. They didn't flinch when they saw me. They saluted. One of them handed me a tag made from melted bullet casings. Burned into it. Humanity isn't blood, it's fire. I didn't say a word. I just gripped it tight until the metal bit into my palm. Because they got it. They understood what the Council never did. Being human was never about our DNA. It was about the pain. The refusal to bend. The instinct to crawl through hell just to spit in the devil's face at the end. It spread fast after that. 1 station became 5. 5 became 50. Suddenly there were human sector loyalists on planets we'd never even seen. Some of them weren't even close to us biologically. Amphibians, insectoids, plasma-born synthoids. But they wore Earth's flag. Modified, sure. Scars and symbols added. But the bones of it were still there. That black and red, that burning globe, that message, we remember. Some of them fought in our name, others just believed, and that scared the Council more than any war ever had. Because how do you kill a belief? They tried. God, they tried. They raided these off-world cells, blocked trade, cut supply lines, broadcast messages claiming Earth was collapsing. Starvation, chaos, disease. Said I was dead. Said the Reclaimer army had been wiped out. Said we were eating our own young. The usual. But for every lie they told, we told a truth. And our truths were carved in blood. No spin, no edits, no fancy language. Just helmet cam footage. A young recruit standing between a Council drone and a wounded refugee, refusing to move. A woman, half-burned, half-blind, dragging a child out of rubble. An old soldier gutting a 6-limbed slaver with a sharpened wrench and smiling through broken teeth. Our people didn't need permission to be heroes. They didn't need speeches, just a reason. And Earth gave them one. Still, we were bleeding. Make no mistake, every victory cost us something. Flesh, sanity, soul. The more we spread, the thinner we stretched. You can only run a resistance so long before it starts eating itself from the inside. Some factions started acting without orders, claiming territory in Earth's name, killing anything non-human without question. We never told them to do it, never sanctioned that madness, but they did it anyway, in our name. And it got worse. One of our outposts, Bunker Theta, was accused of executing civilians on Taris for 53 confirmed deaths, half children. The soldier responsible was a man I trained myself. He used to quote me, said, "Granger taught me Earth doesn't kneel. Only this time, Earth should have knelt." And it was me who had to put him down. I flew to Theta alone. No guards, no armor, just a sidearm and a bitter stomach. He didn't fight when I walked in. Just looked at me and said, "You're late." I shot him in the heart. Twice. No trial, no words. That night I threw my rank into the sea of black stars and sat alone on a metal bunk, thinking about how far we'd come, and how far we'd fallen. See, people think revolutions die with gunfire. They don't. They die with compromise, with power, with ego. And I was starting to see too much of all three. The council wasn't winning anymore. But that didn't mean we were, because we weren't one army anymore. We were factions, cells, ideas branching off the original flame like wildfires. And you can't control a wildfire. You just point it in the general direction of your enemy and pray it burns them faster than it burns you. Still, the name Granger carried weight. Enough that when a summit of defected systems called for a new order, not the council, not Earth, but something else, they asked me to lead it. I said no. I'm not a leader. I'm a weapon. But weapons have one job, and mine wasn't done yet. Because through all the spreading belief and growing chaos, there was one constant. That empty seat, still waiting, still untouched, still glowing in the chamber of a council that no longer knew who controlled what. And one day, I walked into that chamber, alone, no soldiers, no rifle, no threats, just me. And I didn't sit. I stood beside the chair and looked at the wrinkled faces and silicon masks of the ones who once called us lesser, who once sent fleets to burn us, who once laughed when Earth begged for clean water. None of them said a word, because they all knew what I was going to say, and I didn't disappoint them. I'm not here to join you. I'm here to bury you, piece by piece, lie by lie, system by system, until your history is ash and your names are dust. Earth doesn't want your permission. We never did. But now we're going to make sure no one else needs it either. Then I spat on the floor and walked out. Didn't even look back. They didn't stop me. Because predators don't beg for respect. They take it. I've seen what we've become. I've watched this idea of Earth spread like wildfire, torching old systems, freeing slaves, and sometimes making monsters. And I won't lie and say it's all good. It's not. Some days I don't recognize the thing I helped build. Some days, I miss the days we were just outlaws trying to stay alive. But I know this much. We're never going back. The seat will stay empty. The galaxy will stay nervous. And if they want to sleep at night, they'll remember that Earth doesn't ask. It warns. And sometimes, Earth doesn't warn at all. They started building statues. Big ones, ugly ones. One of me, up on a colony moon called Carthus Reach, towering 30 meters high, carved out of old warship metal, staring out across a dead field of frozen corpses. I hated it. Not because of the face. They got that part right. The jaw set like stone. The eyes too tired to blink. the scars visible even in cold steel. I hated it because statues meant we were becoming exactly what we swore we'd never be. A symbol. Symbols lie. They turn pain into poetry, death into destiny. They clean the blood off the blade and mount it on a wall. I wasn't a leader, I wasn't a hero, I was the blunt end of a broken promise. But try telling that to the people carving your face into history. They needed something to believe in. And apparently, that something was me. The war wasn't over, but it had changed. No more front lines, no more clear enemies. The council was fractured, yes, but not defeated. Its members had slithered into hiding, operating through proxies, black market alliances, drone networks. Like rats under floorboards, always biting, always watching, Earth had power now. Influence. Systems were flying our flag not out of fear, but out of hope. That was the new danger. Hope is fragile, and the more people believed in us, the more they started twisting what we stood for. Reclaimer cells began warring with each other over purity. Some thought we should focus on rebuilding. Others wanted endless war. And then there were those who believed in cleansing, not just council loyalists, but entire species. I heard about the massacre on Vestral 2 days after it happened. 5,000 exterminated in the name of human purity. Not by the council, by us. No orders, no chains of command, just a rogue commander named Bran, claiming my name as justification. "I am Granger's fire," he broadcast, "and fire does not compromise." It broke something in me. I spent that night alone, in the back of a rusting transport shuttle drifting through a cold sector near the Void Rim. No guards, no advisors, just me, and a bottle of warshine I stole from a dead friend's locker years ago. I'd been saving it for the end. But the end never came, only more ash, more betrayal. Bran didn't get a trial. He didn't get an interrogation. I hunted him down myself. Took 3 weeks, tracking his cell through ghost signals and dead satellites. When I found him, he was hiding in the ruins of a derelict station orbiting a brown dwarf. He smiled when he saw me. "I knew you'd come," he said. "You made me, after all." I shot him in the leg. He screamed. Not from the pain, from disappointment. "You're soft now," he spat, blood foaming in his mouth. "You used to burn things, now you bury them. You think that makes you clean?" I said nothing. Just watched the light fade from his eyes as I finished it. He was right about one thing. I wasn't clean, never had been. But I still knew the line. I still remembered why we started this. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about making sure it never happened again. Earth had suffered, starved, been laughed at, enslaved, ignored. We clawed our way out of the dirt with broken fingers and rusted teeth. We made the galaxy listen. But now we were slipping, turning into something worse than the monsters we'd fought. Every day I got new reports, infighting between commanders, planetary governors declaring independence under Earth's name, but refusing central authority. Refugee camps starving while bureaucrats held meetings in orbiting fortresses. The Reclaimer Code was just ink on metal now, forgotten, twisted. Even the title Reclaimer didn't mean what it used to. Once it stood for rebuilding, for defiance with a purpose. Now it was just a flag for whoever shouted loudest. I kept fighting, but I could feel the war rotting at the center. We weren't defending Earth anymore. We were trying to control what we'd built. And the harder we clenched it, the more it slipped through our fingers. I needed clarity, so I went back. To Earth. Old Earth, the real one. The original. Not the glimmering capital now orbiting a stabilized gas giant. Not the clone colonies on terraformed moons. The broken ball of dirt where it all began. You ever see a graveyard planet? It's quiet in the worst kind of way. Not peaceful, hollow. Craters where cities once stood, oceans half evaporated, skies choked with red ash clouds, nature trying to crawl back inch by inch, over the bones of a civilization that tried to burn itself out. I landed where my mother used to live. Not much left. Just concrete and ghosts. I sat there for hours, breathing through a filter, remembering her humming that song while scrubbing our clothes in a bucket. She wouldn't recognize me now. Hell, I barely did. I looked in the reflection of my helmet and saw the eyes of a man who'd killed too many people to count, loved too few to name, and trusted no one, not even himself. That night, I slept under the open sky, alone. No tech, no comms, and I dreamed for the first time in years. I dreamed of Earth before the war, before the rise, just a blue marble hanging in space, fragile and beautiful, full of angry, broken people who still held on to something deeper than politics or power. Hope. Not blind hope. Not the kind you buy in speeches, but the desperate, defiant kind. The kind that says, "We will not die today." The kind that built the fire. I woke up before sunrise and knew what I had to do. We needed to burn the rot out. Not with guns. With truth. I spent the next 3 months gathering everything. Every war crime committed under Earth's name. Every betrayal. Every hidden prison camp. Every data leak buried under layers of bureaucracy. I didn't hide it. I broadcast it. To every colony, every faction, every supporter who ever waved our flag. I showed them what we'd become. And then I disappeared. Some called it cowardice. Some called it treason. But most of them started asking questions, because truth spreads faster than bullets, and fire, once lit, doesn't always obey. I always knew it would end like this. Not with victory, not with peace, not with some grand applause echoing through the stars. No, it was always going to end in fire. The kind we started, the kind we couldn't stop. When I broadcast the truth, every crime, every atrocity, every mistake Earth had buried under a mountain of victories, I didn't do it for forgiveness. I sure as hell didn't expect understanding. I did it because we were becoming the very thing we bled to destroy. And somewhere along the way, people forgot what the fight was ever about. Some said I betrayed them, said I'd handed Earth's enemies the very bullets they needed to kill us. They weren't wrong, but they also weren't right. Because if we had to lie to protect the legacy, then maybe the legacy wasn't worth protecting. Still, the fallout came hard and fast. The Reclaimer High Command fractured almost overnight. 4 different generals tried to assume leadership in my absence. One claimed I was dead. Another said I'd been corrupted by council psyops. A third called me a traitor, officially. The fourth? He didn't say a word. He just started burning out the others. From orbit. Within a week, Earth's so-called liberation network became a battleground of its own. Brothers killing brothers, colonies turning on each other, and all of them waving the same flag I helped raise. They tore my face off the statues, melted them down, rewrote old files, redacted speeches, erased my name from databases like it could erase what I'd done. I didn't stop them. Hell, I helped. Because I wasn't the point. Never had been. The mission was the point. The fire was the point. And I'd let it get out of control. So I ran. Not out of fear, not out of guilt, but because there was nothing left for me to say. I'd shouted for 20 years, commanded fleets, stared down gods, buried more men than I ever want to count. Silence was all I had left. I disappeared into the void reaches, a stretch of black between systems where even the stars don't bother to shine. No beacons, no signals, just darkness. And in that dark, I waited, watched, listened. I wanted to believe they'd figure it out, that maybe, just maybe, someone down the line would stand up and remember who we were before the war made us monsters. But they didn't. They doubled down. The Reclaimer factions rebranded, called themselves the Dominion of Origin, claimed Earth as divine, started issuing purity doctrines, re-education programs, forced conscription. They took my silence as weakness. They took my absence as approval, and that's when the messages started coming in, not from them, from the ones we forgot. Refugees, broken colonies, neutral systems caught in the crossfire of our so-called liberation. Places we promised to help, then abandoned the moment they became inconvenient. They weren't asking for aid. They were warning me. Because the Dominion had sent operatives to their worlds, had started replacing leadership, rewriting cultures, imposing Earth's ways by force. It wasn't a revolution anymore. It was a goddamn empire. And I knew what had to happen. I had to become the enemy again. So I came back. Not with a fleet, not with soldiers, with proof. I hijacked one of their ComNet relays and patched myself into a live galactic transmission, just like I had years ago when we called out the Council. But this time, the target wasn't the Council, it was us. I showed them everything. The mass graves on Severin Delta, the child labor rings operating under Dominion authority, the prison satellites where dissenters were cleansed, all in Earth's name, all by people who used my name as cover. I stared into the camera and said what needed saying. I don't care if you call me traitor, I don't care if you call me coward, but if you still call yourself human, really human, you'll stop this now, because if you don't, I will. And then I dropped the last payload. Operation Black Seed. Back in the early days, we'd built a final option. A kill switch buried in the Dominion's own tech, hardware backdoors, coded into their fleet architecture. No one but a handful of us even knew it existed. One of them was me. With a 10-second code, I could crash their entire communications grid, cripple their weapons tracking, ground their carriers. It would leave them vulnerable. But it would also get a lot of people killed. Good people. Innocents. Ones who had nothing to do with the mess we created. So I didn't hit the trigger. I gave them a choice. Dismantle it yourselves, step down, or I finish what I started, and this time I don't leave anything standing. Some factions listened, others laughed. But one of them, one I didn't expect, stood up. Her name was Mira. Yeah, that Mira, the girl I trained. The woman who once stood across from me in a hollow moon and begged me to stop the war. The one I thought had disappeared into the Council's pocket. She hadn't. She'd gone underground, spent years working within the cracks of our system, helping those we forgot. Building something better, quieter, slower, but real. And now she was back. Not to fight me, to finish what we started. Mira broadcast her own message the next day, called out the Dominion, called them false, called me broken, but necessary. I don't trust him, she said, looking straight at the camera. But I believe him, because he never wanted this power, and if he's willing to burn it all down, maybe we should listen before he does. And just like that, the tide shifted. Factions splintered again. Soldiers laid down arms. Civilians rioted against their Dominion governors. Planets once lost to doctrine began reclaiming their voice. It wasn't a clean break. It never is. But the fire was finally pointed inward. They started tearing down the empire we'd accidentally built. And I watched it all from orbit. One old man in an old ship, finally seeing the machine stall. It wasn't victory, it was correction. And maybe that's all you can ask for when the revolution becomes religion. Maybe that's all a soldier like me ever gets. I'm not going back. Not to Earth, not to power. My name's Poison now, and that's fine. They need someone to blame, and I've got broad shoulders. But I'll keep watching, because if this galaxy tries again, if someone else picks up a flag and forgets the cost of flying it, I'll be there, in the shadows, in the silence, waiting. Because Earth's seat, it's still empty, and as long as I breathe, it always will be. I once said I wasn't a hero, I still believe that. Heroes are remembered for what they saved. I'll be remembered for what I destroyed. There's no ceremony for men like me. No grand tomb, no golden coin to place on my tongue. Just the quiet hum of an aging ship drifting on the edge of known space, and the memories that won't stop knocking at the back of my skull. The war is over. That's what they're calling it. Not officially. No treaty signed, no dignitaries shaking hands. Just silence. The Dominion fractured, its fleets scattered. The Reclaimer name stripped from every uniform, buried under the new banners being flown across liberated systems. Mira's rebuilding now, or trying to. She's smarter than me. Always was. She's not after power. She wants something slower, something sustainable, something that doesn't wear a face carved in rage. She sent a message last week. I didn't answer. Not because I don't care. Because I've said all I have to say. My name still drags weight, even now. Even after everything. People still argue over what I was. What I meant. Some call me a traitor. Others say I saved humanity from itself. There are conspiracy streams claiming I was a clone, an AI ghost, even a myth created by the Council to frighten their enemies. Let them talk. Truth is, I'm just a tired old bastard who's killed too many people and outlived every friend that mattered. That's what they don't tell you about revolutions. If you do it right, if you burn bright enough to make change happen, you usually don't live long enough to enjoy it. But I did. And sometimes, I wish I hadn't. I dream less now. That's a mercy. But when I do, it's always the same. Darren, Lucia, my mother humming in a one-room flat, and the sound of gunfire that never stops echoing. My hands still shake. Not in fear, just wear and tear. Nerve damage, ghosts in the wiring. I've patched myself up too many times. Pushed too hard, too often. The body remembers, even if the man tries to forget. I can't walk without pain. Can't sleep without drinking. Can't look in the mirror without wondering who the hell is still looking back. And yet, I'd do it all again. Every mission, every firebomb, every speech, every bullet fired in the name of Earth. Because I saw what the galaxy does to the weak. I lived it, I buried it, and I swore we'd never crawl again. People like me, we're not built for peace. We're built to get others there. One bloody step at a time. I've read the reports. I know Mira's building something better. She's got advisors now, structure, votes, systems of accountability. Not perfect, but better than anything we had before. She's even reopened communication with some of the old council remnants. Not to rejoin, but to outlive them. I admire her for that. I also pity her, because she'll spend the rest of her life holding together what I tore apart. That's the curse of the builder. They live in the wreckage, and me? I just haunt it. Sometimes I visit the outer colonies. Never as myself, just a shadow in the crowd. A man with a broken back and a bad eye, listening to street preachers talk about Earth like it's some holy fire that never dies. They don't recognize me. Good. They shouldn't. I walk past murals of the revolution, none of them accurate. One had me holding a baby in one hand and a rifle in the other, like some kind of savior. I laughed so hard I coughed up blood. I wasn't a savior. I was a blade. And blades don't cradle, they cut. But here's the thing about blades. They don't choose how they're used. They just get pointed. And I was pointed by the rage of 1,000 dead cities, 1,000 broken promises, 1,000 years of humanity being told it didn't belong out here. So if people want to paint me as a monster, fine. But let them never forget the monster was made, not born. And it was made because no one else had the spine to stand up and say, enough. Earth will never kneel again. That's the only legacy I care about. Not statues, not history books, not the screaming talking heads arguing about my morality on interstellar broadcasts. Just that. Earth, standing, breathing, defiant. That's enough for me. They tell stories now, all across the systems, about the man who never sat in the council seat, about the commander who burned worlds but refused a crown, about the soldier who broke the galaxy just to give his people a voice. They don't know where I am. Some think I'm dead. Others say I'm in cryosleep waiting for the next war. Let them wonder, because one day someone will try again. Someone will look at Earth and decide it's getting too loud again, too proud, too free. And when they do, maybe they'll remember the fire. Maybe they'll hesitate. And maybe, just maybe, that hesitation will be enough. I've set this ship to drift. No nav, no comms. Just me, the stars, and the silence. I've got one bullet left. Old school, physical. I keep it in my pocket, not for myself, for anyone who comes looking. Because if they do, if they try to drag me back into the game, they better be ready to finish what I started. Because I may be old, I may be broken, but I am still human, and humanity never asked for permission.